It's time to begin the meeting of the Metropolitan Council. It's Wednesday, May 22nd, and I am called the meeting to order. The first order of business is approval of the amended agenda. An update on the legislative session will be first on the business agenda. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Motion, so moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Approval of minutes and amendment of previously approved minutes. So the next order will be the approval of the minutes. I want to entertain a motion to amend the previously approved minutes of the February 27th, 2019 minutes to include a business item 2019-39, which was inadvertently left off the minutes. A copy of the proposed corrected minutes of the February 27th, 2019 meeting is included in your packet. The recording secretary reviewed the agenda and the video of the council's February 27th, 2019 meeting and has confirmed that the corrected minutes accurately reflect council approval of business item 2019-39. Okay, everybody got that? Can I have a motion and second to amend the previously approved February 27th, 2019 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Okay, then moved and seconded. You get a second, right?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is adopted. Thank you. And now I would entertain a motion to approve the May 8th, 2019 minutes.
Moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. A motion to approve the 8th, 2019 minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion is adopted. Next, we have the public invitation. Do we have the list? Is anybody signed up? Okay. So, as you know, we post and have an invitation to interested persons to address the council on matters not on the agenda. There is no one signed up as far as we know. So, if there is, let us know. Otherwise, we are going to move on. At this point in the meeting, members of the public, okay, well, see, I'm moving ahead of myself here. The next order of business is the update on the legislative session. So I want to welcome Judd Shuckton, who is our government relations director. He's been on at the legislature about 4 days in a row now. And so have you caught up on your sleep, Judd?
Madam Chair, members, I have not.
Good to see you.
Had some really long days and nights, and that has just not been for me. We've also had the chair has been spending lots of time up at the legislature, and our deputy regional administrator and our regional administrator as well. So we've kind of been working around the clock here the last few days, and this morning at about just a little bit before 3 o'clock this morning, we finished the transportation bill. So that was good. After thinking we were going to be done yesterday morning and thinking we were going to be done Monday night, thinking we were going to be done Monday morning. So this was quite an experience to be able to wrap up the bill, but we were able to finish it. But I'll get to that here in a second. Why don't we just start here with the update. This is taking it all the way back to the beginning of the year, just for folks who are aware or who aren't, that there obviously is a new administration and we have a new council, and that in the House of Representatives we have DFL leadership, and in the Senate we have some Republican leadership, and that led to this kind of tough budget negotiation. It was a budget year, so for the council we didn't just do the transportation budget. There was legacy funding, parks funding, and the environment bill. We were tinkering around with the tax bill for a little bit, and we were able to get out of that at the very end, and I'll cover that here in a minute. But the council covers a lot of ground at the legislature, so we were kind of keeping an eye on all kinds of different budget items and also policy items. But we were able to reach an agreement, at least on targets, or the legislative leaders. I am really tired. I'm sorry. I'm hammering all over my own work. But Sunday night, we were able to get targets for the different budget committees. So we convened over at MnDOT pretty late Sunday night, and and kind of worked out how we were going to be approaching this. And so that kind of put everything into motion as far as how we were going to be working with the House and how we were going to be working with the Senate related to these budget negotiations. But so folks know that a special session is now required to pass the bills because at midnight on Monday night, the regular session expired. And so as we were going through the process now of figuring out these budget bills, those conference committees that were working in order to uh, pass these budget deals, they all dissolve at that point, and then we start over new with new bills. So there will not be any more conference committees now that these budget bills in place. They're just regular bills that will go through the process and be done. Uh, the working groups were tasked to negotiate those deals. That those were the working groups instead of the conference committees, and so we we did that, and we actually ended up needing some help from the leadership, the governor, the House and Senate leaders, in order to wrap some things up. But let's talk here a little bit about transportation finance. I want to add the very large caveat that these bills have not been passed. These are the terms of the budget agreement, but we have not seen the bill language. We have not passed these through the committee process yet, but I'm pretty sure that 99% of this is going to be what's in there. But language is really, really important. So we're going to wait to have me say that this is the final deal until I actually have it. And so the first thing here is um, the transportation bill agreement provides Metro Mobility on a separate appropriation line. For folks who follow how our budgeting works with how we get our funds from the state and the general fund, we receive light rail transit, commuter rail transit, Metro Mobility all in one lump sum from the general fund. We were able to separate Metro Mobility out from that. And so now light rail and commuter rail are over here in the general fund, and Metro Mobility is over here in the general fund. And I will say that that is a really, really big deal because Metro Mobility carries a state and federal mandate. And if we don't have funding from the state to cover all of that, it de facto comes to a cut for Metro Transit bus because the call on Metro Mobility is first and then the call on light rail transit is second because there's a statutory requirement for that. So separating those out in the long run is a really big deal for the bus system because they have some protection against things not being, Metro Mobility not being funded in the future. It doesn't become a de facto cut. Now they actually have to not fund it if they don't want to fund it, and that becomes a problem for the legislature versus Metro Transit. So it seems like a small deal, but at the risk of getting a little goofy, we spend a lot of time talking about this weekend. This was a big deal for us, and so we spent a ton of time with the legislative leaders and the working group in order to make sure that this happened. So I will put this one in the win column for us. The other pieces, there were a few other things that occurred. These are a little bit more minor, but there was an agreement of $200,000 to extend a pilot project, a kind of current service pilot project stuff for the Route 495 for Minnesota Valley Transit. It's a route that runs from Shakopee, I believe, up to the Mall of America. I think that's the area. So that was a good thing that didn't come out of our budget. They found additional money for it because one of the things that we've been dealing with is there had been a lot of effort in the Senate to have the council absorb costs and not fund them. And so the fact that we were able to get this funded outside of our budget was very helpful. The regional transit capital bonds, these have been points of contention for many times with the legislature. We were able to take these bonds and get them approved in the transportation funding bill instead of the tax bill, which meant that we had control over the negotiations of it, which was very good. As you can see, we had 45.4 million authorized in calendar year 2019 and nearly 47 million in 2020. So that is really the local match dollar. We levy the property tax for that, and that's what we use to pay for our local match for the fleet Metro Transit, Metro Mobility, the suburban provider. So it's a big deal for us to be able to keep our fleet up to date, and also to do kind of the small capital piece like shelters, electronic kind of stuff like that. The transportation committee can spend a little more time with you on that if you want, but the fact that we were able to get that authority was very, very helpful. Talk about just a couple policy things here that happened. One of the um, only one of the very few things I should say that the governor, the House, and Senate all agreed on was giving us the authority to compare notes basically with the Department of Human Services to see who's riding their service, who's riding our service, and whether or not we can get some check to see if we can get some medical assistance, additional medical assistance funding out of the feds for service that should be eligible for reimbursement. Uh, so we had to take a couple steps to get there. The first thing that we needed to do is have the legislature give us the authority to. I'm just getting an update about here. We needed the legislature to give us the authority to share that information, and so that was provided. So that's good. The next step that we do is set up the program to see to do that cross check, and then we will apply for reimbursement for those dollars. We are anticipating that we will see somewhere between $6 to $8 to $10 million in potentially more federal money that will come into Metro Mobility in the next biennium. We're not able to add that in this biennium. The legislature wanted to start counting that money, but the problem is that we need the authority first, then we need to set the program, and then we got to apply for it, and then we have to get it before we can start counting it. So we're showing most of that showing up in the next biennium. But again, this was a really big deal for us, and everybody agreed to it, so that was great. We expanded Metro Mobility service to Lakeville. That was a priority of many people. The council, we were pretty neutral on this, but the biggest thing is that it had to be in addition to making sure that we received our full funding for Metro Mobility. So it wasn't one of those things that we could just absorb again, because that has tails cost that continues to grow. So if we didn't get our funding in place, it's hard for us to absorb that, because going back to what I was talking about, the bus system, it just puts more pressure on the bus system. And so these things kind of fell into place, so we were able to make that work for folks. One other thing here that was a big deal was that we made a technical correction to the 2017 tax bill that inadvertently took away the council's ability to finance certain types of federal dollars with a particular financing tool called grant anticipation notes, GANs. And so very minor, small deal, but you wouldn't believe the amount of time and effort that it takes to make a minor tweak to that. And we were able to make sure that was handled in the transportation bill as well. So that will be part of the deal. So happy about that as well. On the couple more transportation policy issues, there was an additional 0.35% of motor vehicle sales tax that was going to be provided to the suburban transit providers that was set to expire this year. We extended that for 2 more years, and so that should be a good thing. Our suburban transit providers should like that. There was thinking about trying to sunset that altogether or keep that 0.35 at that place and let it go. But we thought it would be best to do that just for 2 more years, so we can all go to the table asking for more money in the next couple of years if everything, if the transit system is needing more money, which we will. We agreed to language that has the Bureau of Mediation Services work with the council and the Calhoun House Condominium Association related to the Southwest LRT construction. Pretty simple. I think it's going to look very similar to where we were at with the language that was passed in the 2017 bill, but it's just one more opportunity for us to have a conversation and let the folks at Calhoun Isles know that we want to be good partners with them too, good neighbors with them. So that's fine. we were able to end at the Office of Legislative Auditor quarterly transit financial activity report. Um, there has been conversation with the legislature going back to 2017 where they wanted to make sure that our books were right and what our financials look like. And I can report that we've come back looking very good, very strong for the last 2 years. And so the legislative auditor actually came forward and said, we think that the council's financial management is sound. We do a great job, and they think that they should have the legislature point them in a different direction because there's nothing to look at here. We do a good job. And so I think that is a real tip of the hat to Mary Bogie and her staff as well. That we were scrutinized pretty hard for a couple of years, and to have the auditor actually come up to the committee and say, no, they're good, it means a lot. So when this was up there and this was coming up, I called the auditor's office. I said, I'm pretty sure this is coming, and I think it would be best if you do that because it looks a little self-serving if I do that. And so they said, sure, we'll get over there, and they did. And so so this is a sneaky win for us too. I got to see where else we're at here. What was not included in the bill? I'll try to move a little quicker here. There was a proposal to end the state's 50% share of operating costs for future light rail projects. This was a Senate provision. This was not in there. We did not agree to it. It would really tinker with how the counties have planned to use their sales tax. So we backed away from that. It's just not something that the governor proposed, the House proposed. But in case anybody hears about it, there is no change in the state's 50% share of operating costs for future light rail projects. There was a third vibration study in the Calhoun Isles area that was being proposed. We've done two. The feds have recognized that we are doing a good job. They recognize that our findings meet their federal standards, and so this third study was not part of the agreement. So, but we did agree to the mediation that I talked to just a little bit earlier. On the there was a proposal to change the revenue for a min pass on 35W. It would have had about a $750,000 impact to our budget, and that didn't happen either. So we oppose that, and I can happily report that it's not there. There was lots of discussion regarding the campus zone, the free zone at the University of Minnesota, and trying to extend that. That came up very late. Senator Dibble would call it a late breaker. And the problem with this is that it wasn't funded. And so if we want to talk about these things, that's fine, but we should go through the committee process. We should have a fiscal note. We should talk to the university about how this works. And I don't want to debate whether or not it's a good idea, because I think to have a conversation about how we work with the university and the students and our college passes, I think all of that has a lot of merit. But when we are trying to work out a tense budget, we just need to make sure that things that come to us come along with an appropriation so we can have that conversation. So I'm certain we'll keep having that conversation, and I think we'll keep an open mind. But I think we have to have some integrity about how we move forward with our budget requests, and they should as well. So one last piece on transportation policy. There was a bill to have the council's Metro Transit's bus deployment determined by air quality analysis, and it said the council must take our most environmentally safe buses and put them in these areas that have poor air quality. The good news is that we basically do that already, so that was good. We didn't like the fact that it was prescriptive and said the council must, because in some of these areas we have large service that if we had to move the brand new smaller bus that we wouldn't be able to support the ridership. So all that is good. Probably talking about it more than I need to, but good news is that we already kind of do this. So that's good for us. On here on the regional, I'm trying to figure out the notes here. Oh, regional park system, the omnibus environment bill. We were able to receive an additional $600,000 increase. That goes to the implementing agencies for their operations and maintenance. So that's great. Legacy funds, the 40-40-20 split on the regional parks was held in place. We were all very happy with that. As you can see, the regional park systems are seeing a very healthy uh, um, amount of funds that are going into continuing the parks and trails project list. And on environmental services, this was part of the legacy as well, the Clean Water Fund. We were able to meet the governor's target of 1 million per year for projects addressing drinking water supplies, and $375,000 per year for water demand reduction grants. And that's the work that Sam Paskey and Ali Alasan and Lisa Thompson are all working there. So very happy that the legislature all agreed that these are good, I guess, projects and ways to spend that clean water legacy funds. I'm almost done. Capital investment, the leadership agreed on a $500 million bill. The other night, 440 was for state general obligation bonds, 60 million for housing infrastructure bonds. I put in here that it requires a supermajority to pass because we don't know if they're going to be able to come to an agreement on a $440 million bonding bill that will have enough votes in the House and enough votes in the Senate for that to pass. We are advocating very strongly that we have the D line included in that, and we have lots of our regional partners who are also weighing in on that. There's definitely a push, and folks should know that we are making as much of an effort as we possibly can. It was included in the governor's bill as well. So if and when they decide what that bill looks like, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it's in there, and then I'll cross them again, making sure they have the votes to pass it, because this will be one of the last things that the legislature does in the special session, whenever it's called, is to finish up with the bonding bill. And just a couple more points here. One of the things that did not get completed this year were the confirmations. There were no confirmations of any of the cabinet members, and obviously the council members, your confirmations were not brought up, and so that is likely something that we will address next year. And I want to, before I wrap up, say thanks to all of the staff from all the divisions who I rely on in order to make sure I have the information to do this. It's everybody from every division, and so I want to thank them here. And I also want to make sure that Brooke Wardson, who works with me in government affairs, she's sitting over here having a conversation with Lisa, and she is awesome. She is so good, and the council is very, very blessed to have her help me out at the legislature, because I know I am. She's fantastic. So wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. If there's any questions, I will be happy to take them.
Any questions? Councilmember Bento.
Madam Chair, Judd, first of all, thank you and congratulations. This is pretty remarkable. I'm wondering, you mentioned that the Senate has had a push to have the council absorb costs. Has that been a position they've taken for several years? Is it a new position, and do you see them doing this going forward with some of those increases that you noted in the various portions of the budget?
Mr. Schechtman.
Well, Madam Chair and members, every year is different, and so I don't want to speculate what's going to happen 2 years from now. We'll have an election 2 years from now for all the Senate and the House will be up. But a lot of the times the positions that are taken are positions to get you to where you want to negotiate. And so I think it's important to say that what the legislature has done in the past, well, we haven't passed a major transit funding bill since 2008 when the big bill passed. In 2017, we were able to fund the transit system, and we were able to allow the counties to go ahead and levy an additional sales tax, which delivered the Southwest line and are making things happen. So I'm not sure, but we also, looking back, the metro area transit system has been funded to the point where we're able to preserve, maintain. We added the A line, we're bringing up the C line, the orange line's coming, so we're been able to do something. But there is definitely a appetite for this region to grow. I mean, we made the case that we're going to have the state of North Dakota living here, in the next 15, 20 years. So we have to be forward thinking about how we do this. The business community has been out saying that we need to be planning for this as well. And so we've had, it's just our message, and that's where we're at. And I don't know what, that's a tough question to answer.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really easy question. Thank you for your work, by the way. So the mediation with the Calhoun Isles Condominium Association related to Southwest LRT, is the mediator someone that both parties have to agree upon jointly, or how is the mediator selected?
Madam Chair and members, it'll be someone assigned from the Bureau of Mediation Services from the state bureau. So the language is pretty broad at this point. So we will we'll sort that out. It just means that we have conversations. There's nothing binding that came along with that. I guess that'd be important to point out. It's that it's just making sure that people have a chance to be heard. That our agreements that we agreed to in 2017 are already built into our contractors contract, I guess, for building this line, and some of the things we've already done, and some of them are just happening as we move along with the construction of that line.
Thank you.
Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Thanks, Chair. Judd, I just want to say thank you. During the course of the last 2.5 months, you took the time out to chat with, I think, probably all of us one-on-one, to walk us to folks to meet at the Capitol, and offer just great balanced advice and information. And the amount of information in your head, I can't even imagine how you, I'm sure you're exhausted, but how you stay on top of it all. It's just been really a pleasure. So I just really want to say thank you very much. I really valued and appreciated and gained a lot through our conversations. And the work speaks for itself. And I know it's not easy work and it's long work. So I hope that you get a chance to sleep and rejuvenate and have something wonderful in your future. So thank you.
Thank you. And I can be found on Prior Lake the rest of the summer. Which, by the way, Madam Chair, I will say, I thought it was great when we had those meetings with the council members up at the legislature. We've never done that. And I know I've mentioned that to folks in the past, but that was fantastic. I mean, truly, it was exciting. So anyway, we'll do that again.
Yeah,
We'll move it up earlier in the session. It was kind of, I know I mentioned this to folks before. It was hard to schedule something earlier than March when we didn't even seat the council until March. But we'll go back and see everybody next year because you're all going to be up for confirmation.
Yeah, it's all about relationships, right? So I think that was one of the best things. And I'll tell you, Judd was really a leader in our team. We're working with MnDOT and with the other agencies, public safety, and it was really great to see him shine. And he set the pace, which was a high bar of information and how to do things. Councilmember Johnson.
And I just want to add my thanks. And as we move away from session and before next session, it's a really perfect time for all of us to even dig deeper on the issues and get to build those relationships on both sides of the aisle. So I know I'm really interested in doing that in the interim, but certainly after you've had time to be on Prior Lake. So thank you.
Sounds good.
All right, good. Well, thank you, Judd. Hope
Thank you.
rest up.
Yep, I'm out of here.
All right, so this is good. And now we'll go to the consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda will be enacted by one motion with no separate discussion. Discussion on item is desired. The item will be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration. Is there a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All the council
I
members.
guess I'd like to remove the attorney one with the management committee just to learn more about that, where we have 3 firms there and different.
What number is that?
It would be the number, let me just see, it was,
2019-97.
there, thank you very much, Judy, I appreciate it.
Okay, so the number 1, right? I just want to make sure I'm tracking here correctly.
Yep, yeah, I think it was number 1, yes.
So typically what we do is have our legal counsel even talk about that item. So you want to remove it for discussion?
Yeah, just discussion and learn more about it and see where we have 3 firms, 3 amounts, and the discussion was on that then, so.
Well, do you
Our
want to
legal
vote
counsel.
on the rest of the consent
We
agenda?
can.
And,
We'll
or actually,
come back to this.
let's vote on removing it, and then once that's approved, vote on the consent agenda. I believe Councilmember Johnson has the talking points
Okay,
for the committee that she can read and then handle the normal course.
okay, thank you. So we are going to, is there a motion for items, consent agenda items 2 through 5?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to pass items number 2 through 5 on the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those items are approved, items 2 through 5. We're going to now take up item number 1 under the consent agenda. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Sterner, for pulling this from consent. I'm happy to report instead of Councilmember Ferguson, who can't be here today, so I'm acting as Vice Chair. We had this item on our agenda before Council today. So a little bit about the legal services contract and background on the right-of-way acquisition process. The council is in the process of acquiring property from 153 private owners and relocating 177 displacees in the Southwest LRT corridor. The council uses its Office of General Counsel and 2 legal firms to file condemnations in 2017 and 18, as well as the support of the relocation claims process. There are approximately 100 parcels still in some stage of the condemnation process and approximately 20 complex relocation claims still under review. Council staff went through a competitive procurement search that led to the selection of 3 law firms. Best & Flanagan, there are 9 actions for $1.25 million. Kennedy & Graven, 7 actions for $680,000. And J. Selmer Law for 3 actions in the amount of $270,000. These contracts do not have a DBE or MCUB goal. Staff reviewed the DBE and MCUB directories and didn't find any law firms that provide condemnation or relocation services. Staff did note, though, that J. Selmer Law is a minority-owned firm and had been on the DBE list but is no longer registered, and that Best & Flanagan's lead attorney is a woman. The management team or committee did discuss this with staff. So, Madam Chair, prior to any or after the discussion today, I'm prepared to make a motion on this item pending other discussion by council.
Thank you. Councilmember Sterner, do you have any additional questions?
No, that explains it well, so thank you. That should be fine.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, is there a motion then?
Madam Chair, I would move that the Met Council, 1, find that it is most advantageous for the council to award real estate legal services contracts to the law firms of Best & Flanagan, Kennedy & Graven, and J. Selmer Law Firm, and authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contracts for legal services related to real estate acquisition and relocation claims for the Southwest LRT project as listed in this business item.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Item number 2019-97. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. The motion is adopted. So we are going to move from the consent agenda now to the reports of standing committees. And the first is Councilmember Lilligren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first, I want to start by thanking the committee's Vice Chair, Councilmember Bento, for chairing this cycle's Community Development Committee. I've heard reviews and that she did a great job. She's got rave reviews coming in. So that she did ask me to give the report, although I offered to have her do it. So the Community Development Committee brings 4 items for approval in this committee report. The first is business item 2019-89. It's from the Parks Acquisition Opportunity Fund grant for the Phelan Keller Regional Park for the City of St. Paul. This item awards $217,065.20 of the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund grant to the City of St. Paul to assist with the purchase of a critical parcel for the regional park. The parcel lies at the southwestern edge of Lake Phelan and is bounded on the east by the Bruce Bento Regional Trail. The city plans on building a trailhead on the parcel, including restrooms and potable water, which there currently are no restrooms on the east side of the lake. The city is also required to pay 25% of the total eligible project costs, and the city has requested that the council consider reimbursing their local match from their share of a future regional parks bonding round. So, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council approve the grant of up to $217,065.20 to the City of St. Paul to acquire the .89 acre McKinney parcel, and that we authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreements and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council, and that the council consider reimbursing the city of St. Paul for up to $72,355.21 from its share of a future regional parks bonding program cost associated with this purchase, and inform the city that this does not under any circumstances represent or guarantee the council will grant future reimbursement, and that the expenditure of local funds never entitles a park agency to reimbursement.
So there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the next item is business item 2019-113. It's same week item. It's a routine item to delegate signature authority to the regional administrator or their designee to execute regional parks grant agreements. This is an internal control action the council performs in order to allow the regional administrator or their designee to execute contracts and grant agreements with other government entities for over $500,000. It's longstanding council policy to ensure that the Met Council staff expends funds in a way that is consistent with the public purpose doctrine and various governing laws, rules, and regulations. The Community Development Division passes through state and regional funds to the 11 regional parks implementing agencies. 10 of 21 grant agreements listed in this item are over the $500,000 threshold. Trust funds for these, the $16,666,668 in funding includes the total bonding appropriation and the required 3-2 council match. The funding was included in the council's authorized capital program in the 2019 first quarter budget amendment, which the council approved on April 24th of this year. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator or their designee to execute the 21 grant agreements totaling $16,666,668 with the regional park implementing agencies.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second on item 2019-113 SW. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion is adopted. Your next item.
Madam Chair, the next item is business item 2019-114, same week. It's to execute a grant agreement with the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency for the Bridges Rental Assistance Program. The Council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority has administered the Bridges Rent Assistance Program since 1993 in partnership with Anoka, Hennepin, and Ramsey counties. It provides rent assistance to persons with serious mental illness. The HRA provides the rent subsidy. The counties provide support services to ensure success in independent living. The program is state-funded through a biennial application process. So, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt Resolution 2019-8 to authorize the Director of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority to execute a grant agreement with Minnesota Housing Finance Agency for the Bridges Rental Assistance Program.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, then moved and seconded item 2019-114 SW. Now, so is there any discussion? So I have a question about this. Then there was like a sub-resolution. Do I need to reference that? Or it's just part of the motion?
It's just part of the motion.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Your last item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last item in this report is business item 2019-115, same week, to submit a letter of interest to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for their Moving to Work program expansion under the rent reform cohort. The Moving to Work program is a federal designation that would allow flexibility in how federal rent assistance is administered. The designation would allow the Council's HRA to waive certain program rules and regulations to test more efficient ways to operate its programs. There are only 39 agencies nationally that have the Moving to Work designation. The Council's HRA is hoping to attain Moving to Work status under the expansion of the program from HUD. The program expansion will allow the Council's HRA to test alternative ways to calculate rent on behalf of the low-income families served. To note, submitting a letter of interest does not commit the council to anything. Additional council member dialogue will occur if the council is chosen to move forward in the process. So, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt Resolution 2019-9 as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to submit a letter of interest for the Moving to Work program expansion under the rent reform cohort.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Item 2019-115 SW. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Madam Chair.
reports. Next is environment. So Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Business item 2019-110 addresses 2019 stormwater management grants. No surprise or council members, of course, are aware that non-point source pollution is having a detrimental effect on water quality in our region, and many parts of the Twin Cities were developed before stormwater treatment was required, and these grants address redevelopment. So these grants help fund innovative projects to treat stormwater that could be replicated elsewhere in the metro area and help protect and improve water quality in the region. The detailed process, eligibility, and selection criteria are provided in Attachment A of the business item. And Madam Chair and members, I move that the Met Council approve the process for 2019 stormwater management grants described in Attachment A of the business item and authorize staff to advertise the availability of grant funding and solicit applications for the 2019 grants.
Thank you. There's a motion on item 2019-110. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Madam Chair? The only thing I would add is that as you are going out and meeting with your cities, please make sure that they are aware that this opportunity is available. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion is carried. Thank you. Now, management, I understand there's no reports, but you do have an item you want to discuss. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, stepping in for Councilmember Ferguson, who chairs the Management Committee. We had some very good news reported to us, and we would like to share that with all of you today. We have the results of today's general obligation bond sale. In this year's bond sale, we have once again received the top rating of AAA from both Moody's and S&P. Both rating agencies cited the Twin Cities' strong, diverse economic base, Met Council's strong financial position and fiscal management, and a low overall debt burden as factors in the top rating. Today, we sold two separate bond issues comprising of $117 million in new money. The first was 2019A, $72.3 million general obligation transit bonds sold at a true interest cost of, brace for impact, only 1.87%, and has a term of 10 years. A total of 10 bidders with the winning bid going to Wells Fargo was executed or was accepted. The second was 2019B, $44.7 million in Geo Transit Haywood Garage bonds sold at a true interest cost of 2.49% and has a term of 20 years. A total of 10 bidders with the winning bid again going to Wells Fargo. All the sale results fell within the parameters resolution passed by the Met Council on May 8th. And I just want to mention too the parameters on the $72.3 million conservatively. We're estimating at 3.75, so it came in at 1.87. And again, conservatively on the second, coming estimated at conservatively 4.35, coming in at 2.49. And in speaking with Mary, that conservative estimate, we're maybe 1% above what we thought it might land at. So we even beat our conservative, what we thought it might land at number, which is just fantastic. The proceeds are to arrive on June 19th. And I just want to thank Mary and Rich and the team for their hard work. We also received a really great quarterly investment review today, and I want to thank the investment committee for their hard work. But it really is very good to know that, kind of to Judd's points earlier, how well we're managed, how well we manage our funds, and we have great leaders here at the Met Council, and so I want to thank the staff.
Excellent. Thank you. Yep. Thank you to the staff, and thank you again, to everybody who worked on that. I mean, those interest rates are unbelievable, really, how low they are, and that's so good for us on how much money we can save on that. So, thank you for your report. Thanks. Next, we'll go to transportation. Councilmember Barber.
Madam Chair, council members, business item number 2019-119 is regarding the location change of the Transportation Committee meetings due to construction at Haywood. The Metropolitan Council is required to adopt a schedule of their regular meetings. The existing council adopted schedule for the Transportation Committee meetings is the second and fourth Mondays of each month. January through June occur at Robert Street, and July through December are typically at Haywood offices. However, the Haywood Chambers is currently closed for construction, and there are no other suitable rooms to hold Transportation Committee meetings at Haywood. Therefore, by way of the attached resolution, it would be established that the regular meetings of the Transportation Committee are held at Robert Street beginning July 1st, 2019. Following the Haywood Chambers construction, Metro Transit will return to council with a subsequent resolution to return the regular meetings to Haywood for a portion of the year. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt the attached resolution 2019-10 to set the regular meeting schedule of the Transportation Committee effective beginning July 1st, 2019.
There's a motion on item 2019-119. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Councilmember Lee, we had you on the list. I think we either missed you, and
Yeah.
we're not sure which item, so I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment on management item, and since Mary is still in the audience, I wanted to second what Councilmember Johnson said. I just came out of management committee too, and I want to share a quick story. A couple of weeks ago, I met Julie Baja, our auditor, for the first time at a community event for my day job. And when I told her my other hat was Met Council member, she goes, the first thing that comes out of her mouth was, "Oh, cool, we get to audit you guys." So it's a testament to all the great work that Mary does with her team, and this is important work that we do to store the public money. And so maybe the next time I see Julie, I'll have something smart to say to her. So thank you, Mary.
Sounds good. Your next item is item number E, which is a joint report on environment and community development committees. Councilmember Vento. Did you know you're good? What? What happened? Were we not doing this today? Okay.
Madam Chair, I have the report, or I have the action.
yeah.
I apologize.
Okay. Well, we'll think of it being joint. How's that? And we know, and you did acknowledge Councilmember Vento.
Yeah, thank you. And again, my thanks to her. And this is a joint report of the Environment and Community Development Committees. It's business item 2019-105 to authorize the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and the Comprehensive Sewer Plan for the City of Orono. Orono is located on Lake Minnetonka. The Thrive forecast show growth of 700 new households in the community through 2040 and designates the city as emerging suburban edge and rural residential. The city's plan appropriately guides land use at the appropriate planned minimum net residential densities. Council staff has found that the city's 2040 plan conforms to regional systems plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. So, Madam Chair, I move that the Met Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions. Authorize the City of Orono to place its 2040 Comprehensive Plan into effect and related actions to advise the city, and approve the City of Orono's Comprehensive Sewer Plan component of the city's 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
There's a motion is on item 2019-105 JT. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? I just had a question. Are these going to all come through your committee, Councilmember Lilligren?
Correct, Madam Chair, and if they are attached to the sewer system, they'll go through Environment Committee.
I see.
And then traditionally, it's the CD Committee that reports them out.
Okay, and there's going to be a number coming along.
Yep, how many total is it?
167, so we're going to get very used to this. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Other business, our final business item today is the council workforce Composition Trends and Initiatives presented by Director of Human Resources, Marcy Simon. Welcome, Marcy.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, council members. It's nice to see you all. I know that some of you have seen some of this information because we presented at the Equity Advisory Committee as well as the Management Committee, but felt that it would be important for the full council to have a sense of the workforce that makes up the people and the work of the Metropolitan Council. So I have brought some information for you from our annual reporting, and most of this data is from the end of the year as of 12/31/2018. So I'll just start walking through it. So I wanted to start with our workforce demographics, and on the very bottom, our total employee count, you'll see that we've had really kind of slow growth over 5 years to 4,279 employees. 2014 was the opening of the green line, and so that was a kind of a spike of about 300 employees, and we've pretty much stayed the same and grown just a bit over that time. 34.3% of our employees at this point in time are people of color, and this is compared to 22% people of color in the Twin City Metro Regional workforce for 2012 through 2016, and that particular statistic or data set is a census-based update of the American Community Survey. 16.6% of our managers are people of color, and that compares to 12.7 managers of color in the regional labor market. This next chart takes race and ethnicity by division at the council, and we've divided it up into 4 categories: in environmental services, regional administration, which includes community development and metropolitan transportation services, and then Metro Transit bus operators, because that's such a large group, it's a quarter of our population, and then everyone else at Metro Transit in the non-bus operator group. So what you can see is how the number of employees has changed over the 5-year period. And then you can also see how our demographic has changed over that same period of time. So we have seen an increase in people of color in all of our divisions, including the transit subcategories. And we've seen an increase in managers of color in all those divisions as well. I also wanted to really disaggregate that data a little bit for you so that you can see by race, ethnicity, and disability how our employee counts have changed over that same period of time. We have seen an increase in all the race and ethnicity categories except for stayed the same in the Pacific Islander category. We have had our largest increase in Black employees at the council. And you can see I've put the column on the far right how the labor market in our data set compares. So this would be the metro region, it's the Twin City region, and so that would be the group of folks we would be drawing from for our employees. And you can see that we are under, in particular, for the Asian employees and Hispanic. So 2.3% under for Hispanic compared to the metro workforce. Now, I did want to say a couple of things about employees who have a disability. This is a self-report. Of course, it all is, but I also think that that data in particular is reported upon hire. And we are looking at ways to encourage employees to come forth with more information about if they happen to have a disability. We also are exploring a new program at the council to recruit and hire people with disabilities, and that's something that we're looking into. We don't have much detail yet, but we'll be starting to look at that this year. Moving along, our workforce composition in terms of gender. And we have, over the last 5 years, it's been really flat overall for female representation in our workforce. And we think that part of that is because our jobs are very male-dominated. When you compare in digging into some of this Twin City regional data, for example, the labor market says that for motor vehicle operators, that 11.2% are women. And the data also tells us that other transportation workers are 8.5% women. So we think that part of our experience at the council for women in our workplace has to do with the kinds of jobs that we have, very operational jobs, very trades-oriented kinds of jobs, though that's not 100%. We have seen an increase in women in management at the council up to 30.1%, and that's compared to 40.4% women in the regional labor market for women. And we have, as a side note, increased women in our executive roles at the council from 15 to 20 in the last 5 years. So we're happy about that. The next slide gives you a feeling for gender by division. So you can see how we look in terms of environmental services, regional administration, transit bus operations, and non-bus operations. I will say, too, that when you look at the environmental services, their actual employee count has decreased over the 5 years. And we know that we can diversify our workforce when we're replacing current employees. So it doesn't mean that environmental services hasn't been hiring, but their higher rate would be at a lower rate because their overall population is lower.
Say, Marcy, I didn't ask you this. Do you prefer questions during the presentation or after?
I'm fine with questions during.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's because we're going through all this really complicated information, right? So if you have, which might be hard to go back to, if you have questions, let us
Yeah,
know as we
for
go
sure.
along here. Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
This is back a few slides. I was
Sure.
holding it. But I'm curious about if it's possible to see information. Well, let me take a step back. Sorry, Chair. I'm making an assumption that I'm not sure is accurate around bus operators and how they are able to choose shifts that may be more desirable or may better work with a family context. In some of the visits we've had with operators via different celebrations and other things, I heard from women operators and also people of color that it took a long time to get a shift that allowed you to have a family life. And so that was a deterred them from staying as an operator, or in some cases for people who left the business, it was for that reason. So I'm just kind of curious if there's information or understanding around that for operators around, while the number or percentage is really high, where do they fit in kind of that prime shift context, both by gender and ethnicity?
Okay,
Ms. Simon.
Madam Chair, Council Member, the way that bus operators pick their work is based on seniority, and that's very detailed in the Amalgamated Transit Union contract. So we have a 3-year contract with ATU at this point in time. It is very seniority based. There's a pick schedule that's based on, where you sit in seniority, and so that is what rules the work. So that doesn't mean we can't, make proposals, but there's always, we renegotiate those contracts every few years, and right now we have a 3-year contract. So, but typically in a labor environment, especially where there's that kind of work, it's done by seniority.
Councilmember, follow up.
Just a follow up. I think often in this type of work across all kinds of organizations, you see that as being a limiting factor for retention and also diversification. And so I just,
Sure.
it sounds like you're saying that I don't want to infer anything, but it sounds like that's something that is impacting that diversity of gender and potentially ethnicity.
Now,
Ms. Simon.
Madam Chair, council members, I will also say that in order to become a bus operator, you have to start as a part-time bus operator. And there's also the opportunity to do weekend part-time as well as weekend full-time. And so I think that there is, the labor contract also designates a particular percentage of part-time. So we always have some part-time operators, and by the way, you can't be a train operator unless you come as first a part-time bus operator, then full-time, then into rail. So well, I don't know what else to say about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I will, Simon, I will ask the question then about childcare. So I know it's come up with female employees and so forth. Does the council have any policies around childcare for employees and so forth? Providing any childcare, any subsidies, any things
Madam
like
Chair, let me think here. We have, under our flex insurance plan, employees can use pre-tax dollars to pay for daycare. The council does not have sponsored, we don't have a daycare center on property. We have as you we have many garages across the region. So our bus operators are all over the region, but we do not have a daycare facility. We don't have a benefit to pay for daycare for our employees, but the flex spending account allows people to do that in a pre-tax manner.
Yeah, and I would just say, I think you all know this, and we certainly hear this as part of the cabinet with Governor Walz, is that childcare is just a big issue everywhere and everywhere in the state. And most employers do not provide it, but it's just that accessibility of it and with our different facilities. But it's just, my other question would be maybe to the council member, what do you see as the most desirable working shifts? I was curious about that.
Well, I think, Chair, my understanding is that there's a lot of variability in the shifts, and you can't that when you're starting out, you're part-time, that they change a lot, so that you just can't be present. I think it's a challenge with a lot of that was challenging. And if you can't set a schedule for your family because it keeps changing, and if you're a single parent, whatever gender you are, that's not a sustainable context, and that because of the seniority process, it takes a long time before you get to see a shift, so you can't. And I just know in the context of retention, when you're losing people, then you're having to retrain someone, find someone, and it's about 75, the return on investment or the loss of it, it's 75% of that salary you're paying out when you have that kind of lack of retention. And so I just think it's a challenge that many organizations face. Teachers, same situations when we're trying to bring in a population who's been included in our systems, and you have these barriers come up. Understandably, that seniority is valuable too, but then you have an unsustainable situation that it can occur inside organizations.
It's helpful just trying to understand it as well. So thank you, Ms. Simon.
All right. Okay. All right. So let's go back to that workforce composition by. Okay, I think I've talked about that one. Let's move on. So other workforce facts: our average age is 48 years old. Our average tenure is 10.3 years, and 8.9% of our employees are veterans. And then you just get a feel for the workforce breakdown. 75% of the organization is in Metro Transit, and 47% of Metro Transit is bus operations, and bus operators make up 25% of the whole workforce.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Chambliss.
I have a question on the percentage of the workforce that is part-time for transit and rail.
Okay, right here. So other facts that I thought you could see here, that 9.9% of our workforce is part-time. Like I think I mentioned earlier that for bus operators, it's in the contract, the number of part-time operators that we need to have. And and then transit police are also part-time, but the thing about transit police is they work for other jurisdictions, some of them. So they can become a Metro Transit police officer and do work here, but they're also working for full-time for other jurisdictions. So City of Minneapolis and so on.
One more question, Madam Chair. So those contracts, do they change in terms of the percentages of part-time workers, or is that pretty consistent?
Madam Chair, Council Member, that's pretty consistent. We can talk about that with our union, but it's always a matter of striking that bargain. They're very interested in keeping the percentages kind of the way they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with the transit police part-time officers, are we seeing retired local police officers coming back and working for Metro Transit, like they might do security detail? They retire because they age out, they've met the rule of 90, but then I'm just curious, do we have that element showing up in our?
Madam Chair, council members, I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. My impression is that the majority of our new police officers are not retirees.
Councilmember Barber?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can help address that question a little bit. A lot of the part-time police officers are actually serving on full-time in other cities and then serve with our police force part-time, help supplement on weekends or special events, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Ms. Simon?
Okay, I wanted to also just talk a little bit about, we have 12 unions or associations. So everyone but about 300 employees are in a union or association. Our 2017 employee engagement survey showed that 65% of our employee respondents were considered engaged. The average compensation for 2018 was $67,675. We do have a great benefit package for our employees: pension, medical, dental, vision insurance. We do have an on-site clinic, which is across the sky from this building, and we will be building a new on-site clinic over at the Haywood campus that we're planning to open in November of this year. We have a robust health and wellness program that reaches all of our employees and even beyond work. And also learning and organization development department where we have web-based training as well as instructor-led training for employees. Some other programs too. And then we try to really think about how do we brand our employment here at the council, and our brand message basically talks about how our work matters. You know, we make a difference in this region and help the Twin City and its residents thrive.
We have a question, Ms. Simon, Councilmember Bento.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Ms. Simon, what does 65% of respondents considered engaged mean?
So, Madam Chair, council member, we don't get 100% of our employees completing the survey. And our research department took the answers to about, I think we had 11 key questions, and to do a profile of how any given employee responded to all of those questions. So, you can take a look at all of those 11 questions and talk about, which are our highest, which are our lowest, but you have to create sort of a profile of an employee who would respond positively to a majority of those questions. So we did have, trying to think I can't remember what our percentage was for participation. Some of our units didn't have representative participation, so we kind of have to take the data that we have. So 65% of the people who responded would be considered overall in their responses to be engaged.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah, I have a whole report, so to put it into one line, I mean, we feel like when we compare our engagement numbers to the Gallup organizations, that we're sort of in the middle. Mm-hmm. We're really much fair to middle in terms of our employee engagement. Yeah. Okay.
Good.
All right. This piece is about vacancies filled. So thinking about how many vacancies we fill and who we fill them with. So you can see that in 2018, we filled 643 vacancies, and it's been pretty consistent over all these years. 170 of those were filled internally, so that's a 26% internal promotional or internal fill rate. And that's varied anywhere from 20 to 28% over the last 5 years. 88 of the 88 management positions that we filled, 31.8 were filled with women, and 27.3% were people of color. Of the 643, 473 were actually brand new to the council. And of that group, 47% were millennials, 46 were people of color, and 29.1% were female. So, you can talk about who are we today, who did we promote from within, and who did we bring in from the outside world to our organization. We can also talk about separations. So total separations remained constant or pretty relatively consistent over that 5-year period. And our voluntary separations, which is in the middle, has started to level off. It kind of bumped up in 2016 as the economy has gotten better. But now we see kind of a leveling off. So that's been good. We've liked to see that. Our turnover has been steady over the past 5 years, and last year we were at 10.8%, so we've gradually gone up a bit. But it's important to note that the Midwest region, for all sectors, the turnover is 19.7%. So I think we do pretty well. But public sector organizations tend to do well, and we're pretty comparable to the large counties that we could compare our employee count to. Couple of other facts about our separations that
We have a question.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen or
Yes.
comment. Yeah.
It would be great to see this information broken out by gender and ethnicity too. The turnover information.
Madam Chair, Councilmember, we do have that.
So council members have been talking with the staff. So the way it works, and it worked the same way when I was mayor, is the RA directs the staff, so she's to follow up with the staff.
Okay.
And make sure it gets done, so.
Marcia
So-
will be happy to get it
Okay.
to your council support person and team.
Okay.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Councilmember Wolf.
just on that bit of information, for people that are in really small demographic groups, I'm afraid that information might be identifiable as to who. So in cases where you have a really small demographic group, I would request that we not put that information in the report, just out of fairness to privacy of our employees.
Ms. Simon.
Madam Chair, Councilmember, we do follow the MMB guidelines around reporting, so that in particular categories, if it's less than 10, that's what we report. So, okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. So that's what I wanted. Yes, so here's a little bit more data about our separations. In 2018, 39% of those separations were people of color and 29% were women. Voluntary separations as a percentage of the workforce in 18 was 4.7%. 26% of our voluntary separations occurred during the first year of employment. And we know that that's driven a lot by the newest employees, the highest number of those folks are bus operator. And so that's a 5-week training program, and it's a challenging job. 146 of our employees retired in 2018. I think we have seen, in terms of retirement, our projections are fairly flat, but we're losing a good amount of folks each year to retirement. Wanted to talk just a little bit about what we're doing to increase workforce diversity here at the council, because we know, of course, that a more diverse council is a more resilient, is a more productive, is a more innovative workforce. So we have our council employment page is where we attract our candidates. And I would encourage you to go out and take a look at that. All of our applicants go through that employment page, and we talk a lot about what kind of benefits we offer, what kind of openings we have, and what the council's all about. We have 2 major posting partners, and that's with Jobs in Minneapolis and DiversityJobs.com. And those 2 boards distribute our jobs out to 250 other boards targeting diverse candidates. We do also do specific job postings for professional organizations associated with particular professions. We work with hiring managers and tapping their networks, and we have a really robust list of posting partners that we can use for different kinds of jobs like planners and engineers and legal and HR and that sort of thing. We also use the state of Minnesota's diversity recruiter to help us with recruiting staff. And we also have a social media presence on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and soon Glassdoor. I wanted to have you take a look a little bit at our applicant diversity. We have 17 to 18,000 applicants per year. Let me say that again, 17 to 18,000 applicants per year.
Wow.
And we do disposition every applicant. And 43.5% of those applicants were people of color last year, and 34.6 were women. I wanted to remind you that of the brand new people who come to our organization, 46% of them are people of color. So I think we're tapping we feel good about tapping that applicant pool. We do really work hard on fair selection processes. We're a public sector organization. We have greater scrutiny on that front than probably private sector. So we do post our positions internally and externally. And I require a business case for an internal only postings because we can't diversify if we can't bring new folks in, if our numbers aren't as high as we'd like them to be. Managers and recruiters all receive training around unconscious bias, around fair selection processes. Every hiring manager has to go through that training. We have a real consistent hiring process. So we use diverse interview panels of 3 or more people. We always use structured interviews for our first round, behavior-based questions. Our managers must complete a hire justification, and the Office of Equal Opportunity concurs to hire on all of our hires. So they take a look at what we've done in the selection process and see who went forward, who didn't go forward, and all of that. And so the selection is based on knowledge, skills, and abilities. This is our hiring process, and you'll see kind of on the top,
We have
light
a
blue.
question
I'm sorry.
or a comment.
Yes.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Madam Chair, yes,
Yes.
I do have a question about the selection process, and one question is, what are we doing to interest more women to work in the areas where they're traditionally not working? And then the other question is, as a part of the structured interviews, I've noticed in my research that a lot of times the most subjective part is at the end, where you've made it to the final rounds and there's panel discussions. What are we doing to ensure consistency with how that end process works in terms of, for example, the same number of questions of each candidate and the stressing consistency with the types of questions asked?
Okay. So the first question about attracting women to our jobs. I'm going to show you in a few slides our workforce development department, where we have been making some strides in getting women into more traditionally male kinds of positions. I'm right now working with our communications department to help with our employment branding. And we have, I think, kind of a brand problem because Metro Transit's so big in the region, and there's such an image of Metro Transit being all about driving buses. There's also the image of environmental services being about treating wastewater. And we do tend to, each division is really interested in recruiting for their departments and their divisions. And so we've had staff, lots of staff go out and do different kind of tabling events and work with school students and get out to the colleges. But I feel that what I found is that our information, when we're out, especially sometimes when the divisions are going out, we're not representing all of our jobs. We're just representing transit jobs. We're just representing ES jobs. And so we're really going to try to do a better job of saying, this is the council as an employer. Because I can't tell you how many times when I've been at a job fair or even just talked to people about the council, we have 4,300 employees. We do all these things, and everyone says, I had no idea. So I really think that part of our problem here is helping people to see that there really is a wide variety of jobs at the council. But we also have to get at the culture in Minnesota about women working in trades kinds of jobs. Now, of course, we have our challenge that we talked about for seniority-based kinds of shifts, but not all jobs are shift-based. And I still feel in our representation of women in our office jobs is lower than women representation in the labor force in the region. So that tells me that we're not tapping into women for our jobs the way, but, so it's part branding. We also do promote from within. So I think anytime we can do some, make sure we're looking at internal, external. So there's a lot of pieces about how it all fits together. In terms of your question about the back end of the process, so we have a two-step process where we do, we do our structured panel interview, and that is same questions for everyone. We do a selection interview. The selection interview is not as structured because at that point in time, we need the ability to say, how does this job, so the structured panel interview is telling us, do you meet the minimum qualifications? Can you, do what I see on paper, does what I see on paper match what you, in terms of I'm talking with you, in terms of what you're capable of doing, of how you do this work, right? So you have to decide then in the selection interview, so how does this person, like, you'd have to be able to follow up on some things. You said this during the, the first interview. I need to know more about that. So there is some flexibility there around the kinds of questions that we ask. Now, we still do encourage and almost always use a panel for that selection interview. Human Resources also provides guidance about the interview questions. So we have a big bank of questions. We have a competency model, questions associated with those. Hiring managers are also trained because we have questions we can't ask and ways to get at questions so that we're finding out about how a person actually performs in a situation versus how they view the best practice. So it's always about those behavioral-based questions. So those are some ways that we make sure that we're giving people real consistent means of evaluating candidates.
Thank you. One more question. So have you looked at the drop-off, comparing men to women from the panel interviews to the selection interviews, and also people of color?
Mm-hmm. So, Madam Chair, Council Member, we have only in the last year been able to dive deeper into our applicant tracking system data. They seriously upgraded their data, so we're able now to. Before we could only look at we could only track on a requisition by requisition basis, and so with 500 requisitions or more a year, it's been really difficult to see. Now, we will be able to take a closer look at that. We have not mined that data at this point in time. So the data I have in front of you today is all about our hiring. And as you can see, the hiring is moving in the right direction. But we may be able to get some more information about how that's happening
Awesome.
as we work with this new system.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have several people. We have Councilmember Sterner, Lee, and then Johnson. Councilmember Sterner.
All right, thank you, Chair. I just have two questions, and they're very different questions. So the first one, I just noticed on slide 15 where in 2017, the number of applicants was way down from a typical trending, and I'm just wondering if you can give an opinion on that, why that was.
Simon?
Madam Chair, Council Member, that year we had a soft hiring freeze.
Okay, very good.
We had fewer openings.
All right, then my second question is maybe on the same line of one, so I've kind of talked about people looking for jobs, and I've talked to people in the community, and they end up having not a traditional skill set where they have the capacity to learn or capacity, but they're not exactly what that skill set is. Are those able to bubble to the top some ways? One gentleman I know, he's from Rwanda, and his family's still over there, but he speaks 7 languages. He's done public health, and he's taught doctors and things like that, but now he's doing customer service, so it doesn't fit in for example, environmental services, but I think his capacity to learn could be there, kind of thing. So I just wonder those kind of applicants, what happens to them.
Simon?
Madam Chair, Council Member, okay, so the way I look at that and the way I think we can, so we have a panel interview. So we've got people with a diverse background helping to assess the candidates. So that's one thing that helps, right? The other thing is that we have a competency model that helps us to say, it's not just the ability to do, every aspect of the job, but how we do that job. So I think the kinds of questions with our behavioral based kinds of questions, we should be able to, candidates can have the opportunity to talk about how that would address that particular question or that particular work, from their background. I'm not here to say that we're perfect at that. I mean, I think that there's, anytime you have a set of candidates, so a hiring manager might be reviewing, say, 25 candidate applications, and then we may interview, say, 10 of those. So, the idea of being able to take a look at all 10 in terms of how they meet the minimum qualifications of the job, how they meet the desired qualifications of the job. I mean, we do try to push in the direction of, we have equivalencies. So for every education requirement, we'll take that year for year and experience. You don't have to have that education. So that's another way that I think we get at some of the non-traditional kinds of employees or potential employees. I'm sure I'm thinking, not mentioning everything that I have, but
Well, thank you very
those
much.
are some ways, yeah.
Councilmember Lee.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Marcy. I've seen this. This is my third time because I saw it in EAC and management. I have a comment and question. My comment is, as I was leaving Mayor Coleman's administration in the last part of his term, he was beginning to do a lot of hard work with the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And one of the things he did was we took a hard look at our hiring practices, including our promotional rules. Like such longstanding institutionalized rules such as preferences for people who might have, if their fathers or their grandfathers were, police officers or firefighters, they might have a greater chance of coming into the job, such things like that. As immigrants or refugees who come here, we don't come here with bootstraps. We come here in flip-flops. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind, that a lot of folks, kind of like Councilmember Sterner says, they come recently from other countries as new immigrants, and they might not have the language skills, but they might not. That doesn't mean they lack the competency to do the job. And so my question is, what are we doing internally for internal hires and job openings for folks we already have on staff, so that folks from historically marginalized backgrounds can have a chance to promote up or laterally?
Ms. Simon?
Chair, council member, we have, I talked a little bit about our learning and organization development department. So we have a pretty rich, very rich set of courses that employees can take. Also, and they can take it on their own time because some of it's web-based training. We have just this year instituted that internal training courses we have a certificate in supervision, for example, so that completing some of those certificates, we have a PMDP project management development program, will count towards the 2-year requirement, often 1 to 2 year requirement for having some supervision experience. So we do have ways for folks internally. We also have at Metro Transit Leadership Academy. So it's a process where people can apply for the academy. They go through a set of courses, and then they have an on-the-job experience. And we have, like transit control center supervisor, assistant transportation manager, jobs like that. And so then once they get 6 months actually doing the job. So that helps also. So we have a few programs like that. We have a mentoring works program. So I think that at Metro Transit has, even for bus operators, a mentoring program. We have opportunities for being an instructor, a dispatcher. So there are programs as well as career tracks in the council, so that once employees are in the door, they've got ways to advance their careers.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so great information. This is the second time I think I'm getting this, so I think a little deeper every time. So if I'm reading the information right, of the 18,000 plus people that apply, 43.5% are people of color, which I think is 8,000, but also then at least when we're hiring, that same 43% is showing up as hired. So the percentage is tracking there.
Usually higher, yeah.
And then one of the things that I was looking at, though, was in that first year separations, we've got the 2018 separations broken down for people of color and female, but the 26% of voluntary separations that occurred during the first year of employment, I'm just curious if that is broken down by people of color and females as well.
I don't have that information here, but I do have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Get it.
Madam Chair, I think one of the things, you know, it's, you know, recruiting and then it's the retention. So, you know, that's the piece of it. With that much interest, I mean, you know, if there's a way, I don't know what those numbers look like, but certainly attracting and retaining, that would be something I'd be more interested to learn about.
Ms. Simon?
Madam Chair, council member, I've been watching that voluntary separation percentage. And that's the one that I think that, because the folks who leave voluntarily are folks who we have the opportunity to keep. Now, not all voluntary separation is bad. I mean, if you don't have a good job match, employees are not happy in that job, you need to want them. But of course, as was mentioned earlier, it does take a lot to train people, to recruit them, to train them, and so retention is a big deal. I think that engagement number is a piece. And some of the things that we do, I think, to really engage employees has to do with development opportunities. People can see a career path. If they can see that they're going to, you know, increase their skills, that's a really big piece of it. I think that one of the things we know for sure is that that the newer entry to the workforce, the younger generations tend to move jobs more easily. But I still think it's an opportunity for us to engage and help people to feel like it's a good thing, a good place to work. And one of the things that if I could talk a little bit about this piece, our internship program, which I think is a really great way for us to help students who are finishing school see that the public sector is a great place to build a career. We have had an internship program for 10 years plus, and we have 85 to 100 interns every year. So that's a really nice way for us to introduce, you know, new people to work here at the council. And I have to say that back, you know, years ago, we were all wringing our hands about, the retirement bubble and how are we going to replace all these seasoned, skilled, you know, with all this knowledge retained employees. And it's true. I mean, it's been an important thing for us to retain that knowledge. But the internship program helped everybody just relax and go, okay, you know, the new folks moving into the workforce, you know, they're good. They can do this work. They bring a lot of energy. They bring a lot of skill. So it's been a really good thing. We actually will welcome next Tuesday 65 regular interns and 12 urban scholars, and then a couple of weeks later, 9 high school interns. So those folks will come do a welcome week. They'll get some tours, and throughout the summer, they get training. They get to come together and network. They get to do information interviews. They have mentors, and more importantly, they do real work. It's every year we have to say, how many interns can we handle? And I know with our space challenges, we've had in years past, we've had to we can't really have as many interns, but I think this year we're back up to our usual amount. So it's been a great program, I think, for helping us get that word out.
Okay, we still have two more, Councilmember Gonzalez and Muse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions and a comment also. Your presentation was given at the EAC a few weeks back, and we have followed up on this information internally. And a couple of the things that were most salient, or a couple of the points that were made by the members of the EAC were that there's a need to really desegregate the data. One example is that our count of Black employees, my understanding is that it also includes Somali plus African Americans, and those populations have widely different backgrounds, challenges, opportunities, assets, and skills. So it's very important to look at those ethnic and racial components as granular as possible so we can do a better job in outreach and recruiting and retention of those folks. That's part of what the EAC also was discussing is how to work on the outreach component. It takes more than just having the information on a website and having a table somewhere. We have a very robust discussion with some of our EAC members about tactics or strategies that really work with specific communities. And I think that's the point. There's no general cookie cutter approach that works, and that's what makes it harder. You need to know who your audience is and go to them, and you have to be creative in doing all this work and tailor your message to the specific community that you are engaging. My understanding is that the Office of Equal Opportunity is developing an engagement process like that. I think that's what I heard from Cerinthia, that she's new, she's just getting started, but that's part of what they're trying to do. The EAC is definitely there to provide advice and support as much as possible, but I like to see that we are engaged in a more detailed fashion in our outreach work. And like was mentioned before about the retention component, I think that's even more crucial than the recruitment. I mean, I think we can do a fairly decent job in recruiting folks to a large organization that pays well. I think the problem arises on the keeping those folks once they are on board. We need to be more creative again on ways to keep folks not only working for us, but to be leaders inside the organization. And again, that requires that we recognize the skills that they bring and the opportunities that they present to the organization to build linkages to the general community. So take those skills into account when we are grading their performance and evaluating whether or not we want them here or whether we're going to promote them. Not just the technical aspects, but all sets of skills that they might bring to the organization. That's a great way to retain those folks that we might want to have on board. So I guess the EAC stands ready to assist in whichever way is possible, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have more discussions about this in the weeks to follow. Thank you.
Ms.
Thank
Simon?
you. Thank you.
Okay. Any comment?
I'm not sure that, Madam Chair, Council Member, the disaggregated data that the EAC asked for was provided to, and I believe that, I don't know that the committee has seen it yet. I did pass it on to the Office of Equal Opportunity. And we do, as I had said at the EAC, the Office of Equal Opportunity has an affirmative action plan. We do know where we're underutilized, and I think you could see some of the data here as well, where we're underutilized. And I take your recommendations seriously. I think there are some things we have been doing, but we can always do better. And I'll talk a little bit about our workforce development program, and I think some of the out-of-the-box thinking that we've used in that program to help recruit in particular communities.
Let's have Councilmember Muse, and then we'll then Atlas English, and then let's start to move to the next slides. Councilmember Muse.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have three quick questions. The first one, how diverse our hiring managers are? That's my first one. The second one, how often do we update our job descriptions of the positions that we have? Are they being old? Do we review and make sure that they really reflect the position that we are in, the posting? And the third one is, what are we doing to recruit more bilingual candidates?
Ms. Simon.
Madam Chair, Council Member, the diversity of our managers is at Metro Transit is, back to my numbers. 9.5% in ES, 10.5% at NRA, and 19.7% at Transit. So that's the diversity of our hiring managers. All of our managers would be hiring, well, I mean, mostly. The question about bilingual, so what we have done with our bank of questions is we have actually created two things for all of our job postings: desired qualifications around supporting and building diversity in an inclusive environment. So we have for hiring managers the ability to choose desired qualifications that really help us, like in our job postings, show that we're looking for people who can help us create this environment, right? And in addition, then we have questions in the interview, and we'll ask for that as well in some of the applications. Now, it depends on the kind of job, but we have actually included, do you know other languages and what languages are those? So that's been, I think, helpful. I'm not sure what your second question was. I'm not sure I heard that.
Sometimes I came from a city of Minneapolis, and sometimes the job descriptions were very old and the bar was very high. So what are we doing to really to review it so we don't create unnecessary barriers for people that we need to recruit?
Yes. Okay. I can answer that question. We do a review of our job description every time we post, every time. And we use the Hay classification system, so every job is classified and they're kind of broad, but we can take those then and move them into the job posting based on the needs of the job. So one of the things that we've also done is we've leveled out all of our like education and experience requirements, so that we can't have a hiring manager say, well, I need somebody with a master's degree. No, all the jobs at the council that are at this level have this requirement, so that we're not, just inadvertently saying they all need it. And we have the equivalency, which means we can say we can take experience over education on a year-for-year basis. So that's what we use to basically set the minimums. And we only have mostly education and experience for minimums. And then other pieces are more about desired qualifications associated with the work that needs to get done. Yeah. So those are some ways that I think we're trying to keep that fresh. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
So I just, this is just something, thank you, Chair, that comes up pretty regularly as we're talking to folks around the need to disaggregate data. So I just want to, like, any place that we feel like we're going to put POC, let's just think we actually need that information disaggregated, because we can see that number be 44%, but it could be all from one community that inside that's under the umbrella of POC, which doesn't help us in any way. And so it's just allows us to have the value, that information to allow us to do that. So I think that's just something in general to share. Like, we're feeling like we're going to put that acronym down. And let's just know that I think for many of us, we're going to want to see the disaggregated information, because that lets us know. The other piece of that is that there's an I missing in that acronym oftentimes. And so we want to make sure that we're including Indigenous communities in that disaggregation. I know that unfortunately in some places and ways that information is collected, that information sometimes is not. But as much as possible, and if we need to change systems to allow us to do that, I think that is really important. Just two other quick things. In the context of both recruitment and in retention, staff are the first line of recruitment. And so what they share on the weekends and at night with friends and family over Facebook, who's going to promote those job postings, how they feel about the organization says a lot, particularly for collective cultures versus and high context cultural groups. So I'm curious also how staff satisfaction information is disaggregated and or used to help inform how they are how they perceive their experience, and if it's done in a way that's anonymous enough for us to understand and disaggregate that information and learn from it.
Madam Chair, council members. So for every data point here, I can tell you that I've got a lot of disaggregated data. So I can tell you that we have it. So we can go deeper. It's hard to put it on a slide, but it's right. It's okay. Also, I will tell you that one of the engagement questions is would you recommend the council as an employer? And it's a lot higher than 65%. And also, when we ask people, how did you hear about the job? We get a good percentage of people from family and friends. So I absolutely agree that those are numbers that matter. And I'll tell you that in general, there's good news there. We do, by the way, also disaggregate I shouldn't say, yes, we do. We disaggregate the data on engagement. So we know by division, we know by race and ethnicity, we know by union, we know by, so we have a lot of that information. It's kind of makes your head spin. We did find that in terms of the engagement, employees who would consider themselves engaged, that there's no statistical difference between our white employees and our people of color. Now that's people of color, not, particular groups. But when you look at what we had for aggregate numbers, there really wasn't a big difference. So there wasn't a difference. There was no statistically significant difference, and that was from our research department. So HR doesn't do statistical. I'm just saying we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't be able to tell whether or not something was statistically significant. I don't know how to do correlation coefficients. So, but yes.
Just a quick follow-up. In when we look at having, for example, I'm using the workforce composition, disaggregated information, 24% falling under that Black category. I think it would just be helpful to see and know that information that's coming in around engagement, if there are any kind of drops or dips. I also or people who are not completing all the questions, because sometimes a non-answer, if it's not required, is because they don't feel safe enough to answer that question. If they don't answer it, you don't really know. But if it's an unanswered piece, I've seen and done these in large institutions a couple of times, and there's always an outlier in the disaggregated data. And so I just think if you haven't looked at the disaggregated, I think it would be a good practice to do, just to make sure you're covering those bases and there isn't a hidden gem. I mean, sounds like a bad thing, and it is if you have a group saying, hey, we don't feel that engaged, but it's a huge gem because it gives you a target and a group to look at and an opportunity to make a difference.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm going to call on Councilmember Lee, and then I'm going to have Councilmember Cummings come up and chair for a bit, and I'll be back in just a minute. So, Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just going to beat this dead horse one last time. About disaggregation, I want to make a quick illustration about the importance of it because I have friends who are legislators and they're fighting for this at the state. And it's important because you look at us Asians in general, you compare Southeast Asians like Hmong folks like myself with East Asians like the Chinese and Japanese. The Chinese Americans came to this country 150 years ago. They built our railroads. And so they have 3, 4, 5 generations of human social capital acquired. The Hmong folks, if our parents and our ancestors were lucky and they're high government officials, generals, politicians, and they're lucky they came in 1975. My father was a low-level soldier, so we came in 1989. My family is 0 generation removed from living under the poverty line compared to a Chinese American family who may have been here 3, 4, 5 generations. And so this is why it's important to disaggregate data by ethnicity. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there anybody else on our list? No. Councilmember Simon? All right. Ms. Simon?
Okay, I have just 2 more slides. Well, maybe I have a few more, but this is, okay, so I wanted to talk about our workforce development department. So in 2018, we created a workforce development department in human resources. And this is really, the way I describe it is that we create our own pipeline for our own jobs. And the 2 big programs that we're doing right now are part-time bus operator and mass transit technician. We started with the mass transit technician. I'll talk about the part-time bus operator program because you probably heard we are really trying to recruit bus operators. We were at one point 100 operators down from our ideal complement in 2018. I mean, that number's a lot shorter right now, but you know, we're a little bit worried about being able to have enough operators to put the bus on the work on the street. So the goal of our workforce development department is to increase the number, the quality, and the conversion rate of those part-time bus operator applicants into hires. And they've had some success at that. The three ways that the department has been supporting applicants into hires is number one is an applicant preparedness program. So to help people understand what the job requires and how to fill out that application. Another important piece that we found that getting the CDL permit was a sticking point because you have to pass a test, you have to pay some money. So we now, as part of our workforce development program, are paying for those permits, and we're providing a study course. And Aaron Koski, who's leading up that work, will tell you that people came to the study courses during the polar vortex to practice, to learn how to, because the CDL is something that you have to know a lot about brakes and air brakes and things that I don't know. I drove a truck on the farm, but I didn't know anything about that stuff. I didn't have a CDL. And then the other thing that we have is a trainee program, which is once somebody passes that CDL, we're giving them additional support 2 weeks prior to going into training. And what that helps is for folks who haven't driven anything bigger than a minivan, it gets them behind the wheel of a bus. Because sometimes our new hires already have a CDL or worked as a trucker or a bus operator for a school, right? So what this program does is it gets people their confidence. It's like, yeah, I can do this. I don't have to be afraid to get behind the wheel of this very big machine. And so what happens then is that they are more comfortable then in training and because during the 5-week training period, they have to pass the CDL, not just the permit, but the CDL itself. And we were finding that people without experience don't pass it as high a rate. So what we're trying to do is support people to pass that. The fourth area, it's not really in the workforce development department, but it's a retention piece that bus operations is doing, and that's their mentorship programs. So for the first year of a bus operator's life, they're assigned to a mentor, and the mentor groups get together and they talk about transitioning into the job, how they're handling customers on the job, and really being paired with a trained bus operator who helps really represent the job at its best and give them advice about how to really survive that day in and day out work as a bus operator. The other piece that workforce development is working on is a mass transit technician program. And when we opened up the Green Line, we had a lot of trouble getting electromechanic technicians. We were having trouble filling those mechanic technician positions for bus. And so what we did was create this program, and it was under the Office of Equal Opportunity as a pilot, and now as we've seen success, we've created this workforce development department. And so we started with a bus mechanic technician program. We had a cohort there, then we went and did a rail mechanic technician cohort, and then we started a third cohort of bus mechanic. So we did graduate 12 bus mechanic technicians in 2018, and we right now have 23 people who are in those two other cohorts for bus and rail, and those folks are really looking to be on target for graduation. What we're looking to do is unify those two different programs into one as an apprenticeship program and to access state funding for apprenticeships. So we're pretty excited about this work because what it does is it takes folks who are really, low skill or no skill, and they're external folks, and we bring them in. We give them training. They become interns. They're actually intern employees for a time. We've been paying for part of their education. So it's been a really good program. We're pretty proud of it and have won some awards too. So, yeah.
I'll stop you for a moment. Councilmember Johnson.
Just briefly, so the part-time bus operator program, they're not a part-time driver yet, or Or they are? Okay, they're not.
Um, Council member, what they are, they enter in as a part-time bus operator. So while they're in training, they're full-time for 5 weeks, but they're training to become a part-time bus operator, right? Now, it takes about 3 months at this point for people to switch from part-time to full-time. It was interesting, and this is just a side note, the APTA conference, it was happening, or some folks were at APTA, and apparently there's starting to be a trend in the U.S. where we're really folks who employ ATU employees are putting together strategy for hiring full-time, hiring in as full-time, and that's one thing that I think would be really helpful for us to be able to get people to come in full-time versus to come in part-time. But we have to have union agreement to that. It's not easy to do, but because of the shortages that we have, we hope that we can find some common ground with the union on doing that. So we'll see.
Just briefly, and I would really support that. I don't know what they make. You have to have another job. I don't know if they get benefits. I don't know, how you survive on a part-time job while you're hoping that you'll get full-time employment, and then I'm hoping that our wages are livable once they are full-time. That in and of itself is a huge hurdle for people, especially with all of the things that are on the plates of just everybody, but then add complexities for other people that are trying to transition and figure out things with a lot on their plate. So, I would strongly encourage, and with all due respect to the union, if we're going to really solve the problems, and I don't just mean solve the problems of service, I mean solve the problems of how we advance people in our region in general and get them into a better path to life. I just don't know how. I don't know how people even get there. So I applaud your efforts, and I really wish you more success on that front. If we could get people in full time, it gives everybody, I think, a leg up on at least leveling your income in your home life, where there's some, reliability, so people aren't burning out, just trying to figure out how to make ends meet.
Council Member Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
I really love the focus. Thanks for what you said. Sidebar, sorry. I love the apprenticeship work and focus. I think that's a very important thing that many people are looking to right now. I just wanted to clarify, was the apprenticeship just for the operators or also for the maintenance?
Madam Chair, council members, vice chair.
Or technicians.
At this point, it's for mechanic technicians for bus and rail.
Okay.
And we have the work for bus operators. We don't have for facilities maintenance.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay. The other thing I would just encourage you to think about as we talk about our community, low skill versus no skill folks. This is also something that I think comes up when we're looking at job descriptions. To right level them, we got to really pay attention to how we value certain skills over others that lead us to this conversation of people who have no skills, often have the skills as someone who's spent a lot of time as a hiring manager that are the hardest to build in someone. And I hate that we refer to those skills as soft skills because there's nothing that makes it seem like it's less valuable. But when we're talking about people who might speak 5 languages, like most of my brothers and sisters from East Africa, well, that's a tremendously amazing skill to have on your team. Or someone who has great cultural capital in the communities we're looking to work with. So I just think that that's where unconscious bias can show up in a job description, but even in how we talk about communities and really make sure we're seeing people from an asset-based perspective, and we're helping our hiring managers and our organization to really breathe that language and understand that those are things that have been discounted about women, they've been discounted about immigrants, they've been discounted about American Indians, and about African Americans as well for a long time. So we just need to have that language shift. Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Continue, please.
Yes. So I did want, I take your point very well. I meant low or no skill in the mechanic trade. And so it's a way that we get people who don't know how to be a mechanic or don't think they can get that skill set. So but I totally agree with you because I've seen lots of times as a human resource director, you know that people can have the skill, but if they don't have the soft skill, you know, they have the hard skill, they don't have the soft skill, then I'm dealing with them. Yeah.
Just stop you. Follow up.
Just to add in that you know, it never ceases to amaze me how those other skills come into play as really important in all kinds of fields. Right. So if you're working on that, you know, whether it's as a technician, I have no idea what they do, but an operator, or you know, that there's the driving the bus, but then there's the interacting with all the people. That is probably the harder and more challenging part of that work, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, Emma.
Okay, so a couple more slides. So this is a listing of the things that HR is doing this year to help build diversity at the council, to build a more inclusive and diverse work environment. So you see things on the recruitment and selection in terms of engagement and training and in terms of promotion. So I wanted to also just ask for your help to extend the council's reach, you know, to push openings out to your network, to identify places that we can be, to not only be at tabling events and at job fairs, but to really do the hard work of getting into communities and showcasing our jobs. We do have for you today some business cards and some brochures that you could hand out. So if you've got somebody who's interested in the council, we really want you to be driving applicants or candidates to our job site or to our employment at the council site, because that's how you become a candidate, is you have to apply. And they have to go in there. But these are some tools that you can use to get that word out to folks. So with that, are there any other questions or comments?
Okay, yes, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair and Ms. Simon. The Building Diversity Initiative slide.
Yes.
It talks about recruitment, selection, engagement, and promotion. For the promotion, have you looked at, in terms of moving women and people of color into higher level positions within the organization, some of the cultural barriers? What types of assessments have been done? I know you mentioned earlier a survey that was done, but a lot of times that can obviously have an impact on how well they're able to move throughout and within the organization. And do we look at how successful that person, you know, is outside of that job or in prior jobs, and comparing that to the current environment? Maybe there are some, you know, cultural differences or some things going on inside the organization where this person was high potential but not performing as expected. So what's being done to address that, and you know, how do we move the needle in terms of addressing the cultural barriers that exist in many organizations?
Simon, do you have a reply?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I you know, to say that we're, you know, we've done our engagement survey. We've looked, you know, closely at that. There are some open-ended questions there. We have been talking about, you know, last year we did a lot of work around sexual harassment awareness and prevention. This year we're planning to start some employee resource groups, and we want to create that process for having you know, a clear way to commission and use employee resource groups. And I think those will really be our way to get a feel for how the culture impacts different groups within our employee base. There's the possibility of doing a survey of our women employees, for example. But at this point, I can't tell you that I've got a clear plan for doing a cultural assessment for barriers for folks to moving up.
Hello?
One additional question: have you utilized consultants at all in terms of looking at ways to get people to move through the organization and try to break those glass ceilings?
Madam Co-Chair, Council Member, I have not used a consultant for our engagement work or to take a look at this in particular. I have not.
Okay, well, there's one of the ideas that I would have is to look at some consultants to do that. That would impact possibly retention, promotion, and it could even attract additional people to the organization.
You good? Okay, Council Member Alice Ingebrigtsen.
I'm okay. Thank you.
You're okay.
All right.
Any other questions or comments? This was a great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
It's
me.
nice to go away also with confirmed things that we can all do to participate in the work that you do.
Yeah.
It's so
Thank you
important.
so much. I appreciate your partnership and anything you
Thank
can
you.
help us with.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Moving on, we're going to move to reports. So first of all, the chair will be back to give her report. So our council members have any reports on? Yes, Councilmember Alice Ingebrigtsen.
Just one, an organization called Kajog and Mayor Shep Harris of Golden Valley hosted a wonderful iftar dinner that many of us attended, and it had a wonderfully large turnout from my perspective to help maybe bridge gaps, but definitely celebrate diversity and relationships within the communities at Brookview Community Center. And it was all elected officials and appointed officials were invited through the region. So it was really a great event, and saw a couple of people there, which was great, but really a special night.
Right. Thanks for that. And I know as a result of that, I was invited to another one with one of the leaders who said I'd like you to meet some other members of the community. So I'll be doing that next week. And I know that there are a number of other iftar opportunities if anyone is interested. So thank you for that.
If you're wrapping, I didn't realize you were wrapping up, so I'll go sit in your seat.
Any other reports from council members? Councilmember Bento.
The City of Hugo tomorrow is celebrating its Water's Edge project. It's a stormwater reuse program that is the result of a partnership with Rice Creek Watershed District and the Met Council. They received a $200,000 grant from the Met Council in 2016. They're very excited about this celebration and very proud of the great work they've done. I will have to admit that for many years, I thought Hugo was an exit off of 35 between here and Duluth. And it's the first community visit I made as a council member, and I continue to be impressed with the really future-focused, meeting all needs approach that the city and the Washington County leaders in general have. It's just a really impressive community, so I'm looking forward to that.
Great.
And everyone's invited.
Councilmember Lee.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, I was at the Coon Rapids Dam and got a chance to see how well our Parks folks is working with Coon Rapids and Three Rivers District to move really innovative ideas forward in the park plans. And also related to that, I know we have a new pilot equity grant with the 4 parks folks. So I just want to give kudos to the last council, including the 2 holdover council members for that amazing work. I think our work on parks equity is really important, and I'm really proud and happy to be part of that.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. Just following up on what Councilmember Linnea, I'm just going to say Linnea. I also attended an iftar dinner last night at the Eastern Twin Cities Islamic Center in Afton, and it was extremely well attended. I think there were over 300 folks in there. Most of them were non-Muslim members of the community that went over to share the experience with the Muslim community of Washington County. I actually met 2 Met Council employees who were in attendance. Thorsten Ritter, who is a senior rail transit supervisor, and Ali El Hassan, who works for water supply planning. They were also in attendance, and I had the opportunity to speak to a couple of elected officials, including Representative Steve Sandell and Councilmember Jennifer Santini from Woodbury City Council. So it was an extremely well-planned, well-attended, and very enlightening event.
Right. Councilmember Chambliss.
Oh, thank you. Yesterday I attended Think Again Brooklyn's workshop, which I was a part of that organization and getting it off the ground, and it's also sponsored by the African Career Education Resource Center. They had a discussion about affordable housing for lower income residents and universal design for people with disabilities, which was really interesting. They talked about looking at creative ways of developing housing that is affordable, such as attainable housing, housing that is priced for people that so that they can secure housing, as well as addressing issues for the changing demographics in the region. For example, we have many people from other countries which have, multifamily living arrangements, and so there's an issue with a shortage of housing that accommodates larger families, and they talked about that, and the ability to look at some multi-purchase home options. They talked about manufactured housing and, the tiny houses as an option. And I think it's really good to have cities do the kind of engagement that happens in the city of Brooklyn Park, which is where it was sponsored. And as I go out and talk to my different cities, I'd like to talk about the great job that they do in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center for engagement and some of the initiatives to increase equity housing and some of the options that we have for opportunities.
Right, great. Chair Slawik, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. No, I was going to do my own report, but I don't want to jump the
We
line.
have a couple more,
Okay.
if that's all right. Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be on your report as well, but I just wanted to encourage the council to attend the tour on June 4th of the Metro wastewater treatment plant. There's one thing to hear about it from the podium and see it on a PowerPoint, but to actually be there is amazing. So June 4th, I know RSVPs were supposed to be back yesterday, but I'm sure they'll squeeze you in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Phil and I attended the State of the City address in Apple Valley today. Huge turnout. They are celebrating their 50-year anniversary of becoming a city. So they did some of the way back stuff showing when it was just a little township and then growing to what it is today. They've had a tremendous amount of development lately in the multifamily realm in their downtownish sort of area that they have with the transit-oriented development, and things are going well. They were very pleased to have us there and very complimentary about their partnership with the Met Council as well.
Great. If that wraps it up for council member reports, we'll go to our chair, Chair Slawik.
Thank you. And it is wonderful to see you all at so many of these things. And so some of these, I'm trying to get the ones that haven't been reported on. Councilmember Lilligren and I went to Robbinsdale and did a walking tour, which was really interesting. They have all this affordable housing. They're actually building market rate housing, to your point about kind of how that mix of housing and things was interesting. I belong to the regional dashboard working group, which I think probably Councilmember Johnson talked about, but I'm part of the group that's helping plan that event and do all of that. Also, I went to Southwest Light Rail is putting together their MCUB and their DBE group. So these are all the vendors and the sub-vendors that we're trying to get from different communities, right? Women of color and people of color. And so that was really well done. Cy was there. There's co-chairs. I just encourage people, so if you know that's going on, if you know anybody, we have vendor lists, right, Meredith, for that, and they're works.
Those subcontractors are on the construction contract are already signed up through the prime, and so those are established, and so we're trying to ensure the prime meets their goals on subcontractor DB participation, and then on workforce. It's a joint effort with the Minnesota Human Rights Department because they monitor whether the contractors and the subcontractors have a workforce people on the job site that matches their goals. So it's a both end of DBE, who owns the business, and people on the job site doing the work and monitoring towards those goals in the contract.
And this was the advisory committee that oversees that got together. So that was at the Urban League in Minneapolis. And then I think last was, I go to something called the EQB meeting, and Peter is alternate, and we review policies that around environmental review. You probably know all the transit projects pretty much have environmental review. The Met Council is a non-voting member of that. However, it's really, really important work. Lisa Barajas has been working on that. We have one policy that is up for debate in front of that group, or we've been working on. If you're interested in that, let me know. And I apologize for running out. I had my oldest child, Sean, got a new car, and he needed the title to exchange to sell his current car, and so I was running the title out. So I would not usually do that, but of course it was urgently had to be done at 6 o'clock, right? So my apologies for not being here, Madam Chair. Thank you for chairing.
You're welcome. Those are important things.
Yes.
Excuse yourself.
Family first, priorities are in order.
Yes. So next would be the report from the regional administrator. Anything, Meredith? Nothing? Okay. Our council?
No report,
Nothing?
thank you.
Okay. I guess that concludes the meeting, except I would like to, I'm sure, on behalf of the council members, thank all of the staff and all of you for, I know it's been just unbelievably pressure-filled and time commitment beyond. And so thank you for all that you've done. I think we have lots of victories to celebrate and lots of ways to move forward. So I think that's really exciting. So thank you for that. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.